BS-Free Witchcraft is a production of the Nerd and Tie Podcast Network. Nerd and Tie produces podcasts ranging from actual play to true crime, and you can find more at nerdandtie.com or join our Discord by going to nerdandtie.com/Discord. Welcome to BS-Free Witchcraft, your monthly guide to the modern witchcraft movement, minus a lot of the usual, well, bullshit. I'm your host, Trey Dorn, and this month as I promised before, after doing two episodes of like serious social issues, we're gonna just talk about some witchcraft stuff today, guys. We're just gonna talk about some witchcraft. We're not gonna talk about Nazis. We're not gonna talk about QAnon. No white supremacists at all. I mean, maybe technically a person who I mentioned might end up having been one, because I don't know these people personally, because the people I'm thinking about mentioning are just prominent witches. So, and I might not even say their names. Who knows? Anyways, this isn't about white supremacy. All right. Good news, everybody. This isn't about white supremacy or the satanic panic or like people coming for us with pitchforks, or it's not going to be about anti-Semitism. It's not going to be about, all that stuff exists in the world and needs to be discussed, but we're going to give you a break from it this month because like I thought about like, hey, maybe I'll do my episode on TERFs in witchcraft, and then I was like, oh my god, no, that would like depress everybody. Like, no, we're gonna stick to a nice little witchcraft topic this month and try to stay positive. Yeah, we're gonna try to stay positive. As much as the show ever stays positive. I'm still going to be a sarcastic jackass, but I'll be a positive sarcastic jackass talking about fun things and not deeply, gravely depressing and distressing things. So good news. This month on the podcast, what we are talking about is just kind of a general overview about the Wheel of the Year, what it is, where it comes from, and any associated nonsense that we've picked up along the way. This is gonna be a fun little thing just about the Wheel of the Year, and there's plenty of nonsense, but none of it depressing. I don't think. I guess some of it's depressing. It depends on your point of view, but we're going with it, and yeah. So what we're talking about today, again, is the Wheel of the Year. The Wheel of the Year is a set of 8 holidays which have grown they've gotten kind of general acceptance around modern paganism and witchcraft. Like, they started with Wicca, and we're going to talk about the origin of why these specific 8 holidays and their names as we get into this more, but they started just out as like a Wiccan thing. Like, it was a Wiccan thing, but because, again, Wicca has sucked all the air out of the room for so long in the modern witchcraft movement, and I say this as a Wiccan. I can criticize my own people, because it became such a ubiquitous thing. These got thought of as witches' holidays, and therefore this became kind of this idea that like, oh, witches have to celebrate these 8 holidays. No, they don't. What are you? No. There is absolutely no obligation that any non-Wiccan adhere to these, and there's nothing, almost none of these are exclusively a Wiccan thing, so go ahead and use the holidays if you're not Wiccan. Like, I'm not like saying that, like that would be stupid for me to say that. But like the Wheel of the Year is not this like demandingly universal thing that you'll get like some people like on Tumblr talking about like all witches do this. No, you dummy. I shouldn't call people stupid. I can call me stupid. I shouldn't call other people stupid. They are incorrect. That is, they are incorrect. So, what are the 8 holidays of the Wheel of the Year? Well, The 8 holidays are... There's a bunch of different names. But the general common names for the 8 holidays of the year, if I bother to... I'm literally, like, I have pulled open my Book of Shadows. Here we go. Like, I literally... Like, I'm gesturing at this thing like you can see me. This is an audio show. It's... These are the 8 holidays of the Wheel of the Year. Now, I'm going to be pronouncing these names in what I refer to as the common American witch pronunciation. Some of these might be not quite right for the historical way that you're supposed to pronounce these words, but these are the ways that I have heard most of my fellow witches pronounce these words over the past several decades, because I've been a witch since the mid-90s. So they may not be accurate pronunciations for the way that the historical festivals, some of these have their names taken from, use, but they are the pronunciations I'm going to use. All right. So we're going to start at Samhain, which is October 31st at So the way that I've always celebrated is October 31st at sunset until sunset on November 1st, but some people just say the day. All of these dates are like pretty movable. And these are, of course, Northern Hemisphere dates. Effectively, for the Southern Hemisphere, you got to rotate these whole things by 6 months because they're very seasonal. And, yeah. If you live on the equator, I guess it's which side of the equator you're on that day. That'd be really weird to be a witch living on the equator. I've never really thought about that. I've thought about, like, what it's like to live in, like, Australia or something, but I've never thought about that's just gotta be, it's gotta be weird. Anyways, I'm digressing. Samhain, October 31st is the most common date you'll hear for this in the Northern Hemisphere. It's a harvest festival. It's the, means summer's end, literally. Then we have, I'm just gonna blow through these. Don't worry. If I might do like more in-depth episodes on each holiday going down the road. But yeah, it's we're just gonna briefly go over this. Then you have the winter solstice, Yule, and that takes place on whatever day the winter solstice is that year. That it varies based on year, but also kind of where you are in the world. Depending on the solstice point, can fall on a different day technically, but it's the winter solstice. It's Yule. Then in February, either February 1st or February 2nd, depending on who you ask, is Imbolc, also known as Candlemas, but Imbolc is the more common name you'll see for it. And I always do that February 2nd, but I know some people do that February 1st. Then Ostara, which is the vernal or spring equinox in March. And if you're listening to this and you're a regular subscriber who's just listening to this feed for free, it happened about a week ago when this gets released. If you are if you're a Patreon subscriber, you got this right about Ostara. So good job. Patreon patrons get these episodes a week early. I'll just mention that. Even $1 a month will get you this episode a week early. That's the Ostara is the spring equinox. Then Beltane, which is, again, this is where we get into my common American witch pronunciation is what I'm saying now, Beltane. And I know that's not right for the way that the actual, like, historical thing, and that they're, yeah. I know I'm saying it in a way that is technically wrong, but literally all the witches I know in real life call it Beltane. So I'm just, it's Beltane to me. And that is, for me, it's always April 30th at sunset through sunset on May 1st. It's Bonfire Festival. Then after that, we get to Midsummer, or some call it Litha, or Litha. I don't know how to pronounce that one because I always call it Midsummer, because I like it better. And that's the summer solstice. And then we move to August 1st is the most common date for this. I've seen it as late as August 5th. But Lunasa, which is the hardest of all to spell, which is why a lot of us just write down Lammas, which is technically a different holiday, but that's just related. But, whatever. Lunasa is easy to say, hard to spell. And then in autumn, in September, we have the Autumnal Equinox, which is by many of us called Mabon. It's, the name Mabon is probably the most controversial one. Although Letha and Ostara also got their names from, so Aidan Kelly is the one who named Mabon, and it's probably the most he's a very controversial figure. Like, you could get into fights with Gardnerians about that stuff. And there are some ones who get really kind of prickly when you call like Mabon, because of it. Although, again, Ostara and Letha he also named. I'm gonna call it Mabon, and y'all can fight me, and I'm definitely gonna have to do I'm gonna have to do a whole episode on Aidan Kelly, because I get why certain Gardnerians don't like him and have an issue with him. On the other hand, he did some stuff that was kind of important, and yeah, no, that's going to be a whole fight. It's just, and those are our 8 holidays. Those are our 8 holidays of the Wheel of the Year, just in name and relative date. And obviously, in the Southern Hemisphere, when it's Beltane in the Northern Hemisphere, it's Samhain in the Southern Hemisphere. When it's Yule in the Northern Hemisphere, it's Midsummer or Letha in the Southern Hemisphere. And vice versa. Imbolc lines up with Lunasa, Ostara, and Mabon. Just flip them. Because again, obviously the seasons are rotated because they're in the opposite side of the planet. And that's how seasons work. With the relative position of the Earth in its tilt versus the sun. Yeah. All right. So you may be asking yourself, as I mentioned, Aidan Kelly gave the names of Letha, Ostara, and Mabon. And Yule was a pre-existing name for, used by many groups, the Germanic people for the time around the winter solstice. So, but the other 3 are all kind of tacked on names. And Ostara, okay, yeah. God, I can't believe. So it's this time of year, so of course I'm seeing that stupid Ishtar post. Ishtar has nothing to do with Easter, but also the goddess Eostre might not have existed, and Beatles was a bad researcher, and there's not really much pagan about anything having to do with Easter. I hate to tell you guys. But so to digress for just a few moments here, there's this weird fascination with the Christians stole our holidays. Well, that might have happened a little bit, as a recruitment technique, but not as much as people think it did. There's the historical evidence for a lot of this stuff is really, really questionable when you dive back into it far enough. The problem is that if someone had a theory 100 years ago that feels like it's authentic, but maybe based on still speculation. So, the Christians did, Christmas being, the 25th of Christmas being 25th of December has very little to do with any Christian holidays. It doesn't have to with any non-Christian holidays. Because Jesus' So, okay, fun stuff. It all has to do with Judaism. Everybody forgets about Judaism. Just bunch of... Who would have thought the bunch of white, as in racial, witches who grew up in majority Christian countries who then went to become witches didn't know a lot about Judaism? Who would have thought? So like Christmas is the 25th of December, but it was long before like the expansion of like the Christian church, because Jesus of Nazareth was crucified, like according to legends, right around the time of like Passover, and there was a thing in Christian belief that Jesus had also been conceived on Passover. So they just did the math of adding 9 months to that. That's it. That's and they got like, and so yeah. Anyways, that's really not witchcraft related. That's just me getting frustrated with people who do your research, folks. Like, and don't believe every book you read, because Llewellyn's published a lot of stuff. It just, some of it's good, some of it's not, and sometimes things become legends within the community, like the idea that this Wheel of the Year is ancient, and it is not. These particular 8 holidays collected together are not an ancient thing, and the fact is that like Letha Star and Mabon, those are labels that have only been around since like the 70s for these holidays, and like Doreen Valiente didn't even use those names, you know. The way that these holidays were put together was in the 50s. Again, we talked about in the history of, we talk about Gerald Gardner, we talked about the Bricketwood Coven, and you can go back and listen to that. But that's really where this starts. So the way the story goes, and this is, you know, I don't know if there's necessarily a lot of evidence for this, but this is the way the story is told. It's that Gerald Gardner, was leading the Bricketwood Coven, and Ross Nichols, who was part of the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, they both kind of adopted this calendar to hold more frequent. They wanted to party more celebration, and the rumor is that the two of them developed this calendar during a naturist retreat, because there's nothing that Gerald Gardner likes to do more than find excuses to get people naked. And Gardner wanted to argue for the celebration of the solstices and equinoxes, while Nichols wanted to argue for the celebration of the 4 Celtic fire festivals. And so what they did was they combined these two ideas to the 8 holidays. And that's why you'll note they're not perfectly spaced, even though it's a quote-unquote Wheel of the Year. Like, there's more distance between certain holidays. And those 4 fire festivals, like, we're pretty sure they existed. In the 10th century, Cormac Mac Carthaig, I probably said that wrong. I can't pronounce anything, but he wrote about the 4 great fires lighted up on the 4 great festivals of the Druids in February, May, August, and November, and those would be, of course, what we now call Imbolc, Beltane, Lunasa, and Samhain. And so, yeah, it's pretty much called the witches and the Druids got together, said, "Hey man, we need to party more, and we're currently naked. Let's come up with like a nice little calendar to party." And so, yeah. Like, and one of the reasons, though, that's why this Wheel of the Year feels more universal, though, because the witches and the Druids agreed on this, man, but they just happened to be naked at the time. Like, I don't know. Like, and Yeah. So, and that's where we get, Gardner first referred to these as Beltane, Lunasa, Samhain, and Brigid is the, and by the mid 1960s, the phrase "Wheel of the Year" had been coined to describe the cycle of holidays. So, combining these, so the four. So you have four pre-existing kind of Celtic festivals, which were pre-existing holidays, and then you have the solstices and equinoxes, were incorporated, and the combination of these two is 100% a 20th century invention, right? And I've talked before about how older doesn't make it better, and I'm a Wiccan. I celebrate all 8 of these holidays. Some more than others because frankly it's just harder to do some than others. But these are my holidays, but we have to fully acknowledge that this is largely a Wiccan thing, just because the Wiccans tend to outnumber the Druids quite a bit, at least through how Wicca had a big blow up in the late 20th century that modern neo-Druidism hasn't necessarily had. And so that's why, also though you get different weights. Valiente referred to the four Celtic holidays that are kind of incorporated to the Wheel of the Year as the greater Sabbats, and then the equinoxes and solstices as the lesser Sabbats. And she just referred to those by the names of their season. She didn't use Aidan Kelly's names because Aidan Kelly is a controversial figure in witchcraft because coven secrets. No, I don't want to make fun of that too much. You make an oath, you break an oath. Obviously, someone's going to be pissed off you broke an oath. Again, that is a whole episode unto itself, and it is certainly a thing. So this is the Wheel of the Year. Importantly, though, it's important to remember, though, that this is again a modern invention. This is a new thing. This is a modern combination of ideas, some old, some new, and oh look, that's the entire modern witchcraft movement all together. Yeah, yeah. Now, with all that background, I guess the question is, does a witch have to celebrate these holidays? No! Of course not. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do when it comes to this. Okay, so Wiccans usually celebrate, or at least mark, these holidays, but that's because, with Wicca, you are signing up for a very particular set of stuff. I want to be a Wiccan, I want to do this stuff. I'll admit that often I'm lazy and I'm not always good about celebrating holidays. It's way easier to be a Samhain and Beltane witch. Remembering to bake something on Lunasa, or I haven't done shit for Ostara in a long time. I'm probably not great. Anyways, but the point is that you definitely, if you're not a Wiccan, you don't have to do any of this stuff. Just like if you're not a Wiccan, you don't have to do any Wiccan thing. But these are open holidays. Nobody owns the solstices. No one owns the equinoxes. Nobody, and the other 4 holidays on the Wheel of the Year are pre-existing things, right? So they're not inherent. There's nothing inherently Wiccan about those other holidays so much as Wiccans choose to celebrate those pre-existing holidays. You dig? Yeah. So that's Trey's basic introduction to the Wheel of the Year. Feel free to disregard everything I said. Oh, dear Lord. See, I promise this would be a less depressing episode. I promise this would be a less depressing episode, and I think I've delivered. I think that we've maybe gotten some helpful stuff. Obviously, experienced witches, you already knew this, or at least, you looked at the Wikipedia page. I don't know. It's on the Wikipedia page. Oh my God, I could have just looked at the Wikipedia page. Why do I do all this work? Half the stuff I said, it's right here. Oh. Why don't I just look at Wikipedia first? Okay, thank you guys for listening to yet another episode of BS Free Witchcraft. Remember, this show, it only happens because of support from listeners like you. And you can support the show by going to patreon.com/TRAEGORN. That is patreon.com/TRAEGORN. And even for just $1 a month, you can get these episodes early. And it's, mind you, if you feel like contributing to one of our higher tiers, I'd give you a shout out right now. And the current people receiving shout outs are Stephanie Graves, Mary Stowell, Lindsay Dosey, and Bruce Norville. Thank you guys so much for your support, and thanks to everybody else who gives support. I know that obviously only that $10 tier gets their name read on the show, but I would rather have 5 $1 supporters than 1 $10 supporter, and I'll say that every day because I understand that times are tough and it's the world's a burning nightmare. So if you can't afford to contribute, I also understand. If you can't contribute at all, like if you can't even do the $1 tier, also I get it. What you can do to help support the show is tell everyone about it. Share this show on your social media. Remember, you can follow this show on Facebook at facebook.com/bsfreewitchcraft, and you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/TRAEGORN. You can find me on Tumblr at TRAEGORN.tumblr.com. And remember, the show is a Discord where you can talk to anybody who listens, who shows up. I don't know. You can talk to me. You can talk to me. You can talk to lots of people because it's a Discord for the whole Nerd and Tie network, which includes other shows like Hex Positive with Brina Guerin, which is the other witchcraft show on the network. And she's been on this show more than once. And you could listen to chat with Brie of Hex Positive, or you can, you should check out other stuff on the Nerd and Tie network. But you can join our Discord at nerdandtie.com/discord. And you can check out other shows like Hex Positive at nerdandtie.com/hex. Or, we just, a new show launched on the network from Jody and Tyler of Cool and Unusual Punishment called Poor Man's History, where Jody and Tyler sit down and drink and tell each other his stories from history that are funny and weird. And it's a good old time. And you can find more information about that at nerdandtie.com/poormanshistory. Or just go to nerdandtie.com, click on our shows, all that fun stuff. Also, if you want to harp at me for anything I said in this episode, I actually would love to hear it. If you go to bsfreewitchcraft.com and click on the contact form, that's what it's there for. If you got questions, if you have thoughts, if you feel like yelling at me, if you have suggestions for an episode subject. The whole reason why I did this episode is because it was suggested to me by a listener on the Discord. So do that. Tell me things. There's a contact form at bsfreewitchcraft.com, or you can just talk to me directly on the Discord, and you can again join that Discord at nerdandtie.com/discord. And with that, magicians, I'm gonna just run away from everything and whew. See, I promised you I wouldn't be depressing this month, and I wasn't. Unless you're a Gardnerian and you want to fight me about Aiden Kelly. I guess. That would be fun. You should do that. I'm going to have to do a whole episode on that guy. It's a very controversial figure. And it's sometimes funny to me to watch people get mad about him. Even though, I understand that, there's legitimate reason, but also there's a very complex other side to it that doesn't get mentioned whenever Gardnerians bring it up these days. Okay, I'm going to go now. Bye!